Ian Trottier here from Dallas, Texas, and we're at the Reawaken tour. Holy cow, this tour is really taken off.
Yes, it is.
Kimberly and Emily and Olivia joins us, and these are the Mama Bears from Iowa that have done some really excellent work in regards to pushing back mandates in the state of Iowa. Is this the first show that we've done? No, we did one
in California.
Anaheim.
Yes.
Yeah, we did a show in Anaheim. So that's right. That we were in that. It was very. You weren't there, Olivia, but it was very hot. Yeah. So if you've ever been around a place that needs AC, air conditioning, that needed it, and we didn't have. Hey, but we didn't have any. Okay. So anyway, so Olivia is 7 years old.
Yeah.
And Olivia is Kimberly's daughter.
Yeah.
Kimberly, update us, and Emily, update us initially, and we'll give some time here to Olivia. Update us on your movement and what's new in Iowa.
Yeah, so our movement started with her and the mask mandates, and we got the mask mandate lifted through the governor. We got a law passed that got mask off all kids K through 12. Unfortunately, we had a federal judge come in that was appointed by Clinton that put a temporary halt to our mask mandate. So schools, there's been 11 schools across the state that have enforced the mask mandate back on kids. So we're currently still fighting with them. Luckily, we got our school board. We went and protested in front of our school board. And
what city is it?
Ankeny, Iowa. So we're in Ankeny, Iowa, and we were able to overturn six seats in our district. We overturned 1 mayor, 2 city council, and 3 school board members. And by doing that, we, as of last...
Mama Bears.
Yes. As of last Tuesday, we were able to get masks back off our kids in our school. So everybody was able to...
The whole district or just your school?
Our whole district, yes.
So no masks. Olivia, you're going to school without a mask?
Yep. And she didn't have a mask to begin with because we were able to give religious exemptions.
Okay.
So if your state has religious exemptions, the only states that do not is California and New York. So
they've ruled out religious exemption in those states, and that's...
Yes.
There sounds like it.
Yes, for any and all vaccines. So, but most states do have religion and...
That passed through the respective Congresses in those states?
Yes, it did, a bill, and it said there will be no medical and no religious exemptions in California or New York accepted.
Yeah, and that happened in 2018.
That was 2018.
Yes.
Okay, so these.
So they knew this was coming.
Right.
They were getting ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And they blamed the measles outbreak back then to do it.
In California and New York, both places.
Yes. So they're blaming the measles to take it away. So that's what started this whole thing with those 2 states. But most states do have medical and religion, and
some of them have philosophical exemptions as well. Some states do.
Philosophical.
Yes, there are some states that have 3 states that have.
Okay. So Olivia gets the no mask because of the religious. That was honored in her case.
She actually got it because of the medical, but my other children got it because of the religion. So if you go online, you can go to any Google or platform.
America's Frontline Doctors.
Yes, and go to printable PDF forms for religious exemptions for your state. Print it off. Have it notarized and turn it into your school board nurse, and your kids do not have to wear a mask to school anymore.
Outside of California and New York.
Yes, outside of New York.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. Olivia, how do you feel about students that wear a mask? Do you have any comments on that? When you see a student wearing a mask, what do you think? Just what do you feel? How do you feel? What do you think? What comes to your mind? Anything come to your mind in particular? So if you see somebody wearing a mask, you see it's at a supermarket, or you see somebody wearing a mask, what do you feel? How do you feel? Do you have any reaction to that? No particular reaction.
How shy?
How about your sisters? You have sister and brother, or?
She got 1 brother and 5 sisters.
1 brother and 5 sisters.
6 sisters. That's
6
right.
sisters. How about some of your siblings? Do they have any particular feelings about wearing masks or seeing people wearing masks?
Kayla does, doesn't she? Kayla doesn't like it, huh?
Kayla doesn't like it? If Kayla was sitting here with you, what would Kayla say right now to that question?
Would you say, take off your mask?
If I was wearing a mask, would she ask me to take my mask off?
No.
She would respect me wearing a mask. But does she wear a mask? She doesn't wear a mask? Do you wear a mask?
What do you tell your teachers at school about masks? You're not gonna talk?
Are you shy right now? That's okay. We'll ask Emily. Let's ask Emily some questions. What do you think about that? We'll ask Emily some questions. Emily, how do you feel about wearing masks?
I feel like it harms children. And
How about you?
well, personally, I don't wear them. I'm not going to comply. This is all about control. It's all about tyranny. And the longer we comply, the longer this nightmare continues on. So I'm not going to be part of this world system. I'm going to do what God's asking me to do and stand up and not comply to this world system. And I'm not going to put on my shoulder. There's no way. It's evil and it's childish. What happened to Olivia? Physically, she got 4 staph infections. And my daughter has special needs. Yes, she has sensory processing disorder. Those who don't know what that is, it's like a sensitivity to things on your skin, any type of texture. So one of those masks on your face feels like absolute torture. And the schools would not relent. They would not help my daughter. In fact, they segregated her. And any type of reaction like that is not acting in the goodwill and the health, quote, health, no, it's not. It's about conformity and control. It's about.
And how long have you felt that way?
From the beginning, really.
I've never worn one from day one.
No.
You've never. So when Dr. Fauci, who's got a really interesting history with the AIDS epidemic and that sort of thing, right? So when Dr. Fauci came out and says everyone needs to be wearing a mask, but then he's flip-flopping, what was the general consensus of people around you in Iowa? What did you get from the general community?
Our community is pretty liberal, so a lot of them did comply. And I got a lot of pushback from people saying, I lost some friends because I said I wasn't complying. I wasn't going to do it.
You lost friends?
I did. I lost friends, and I'm just like, I'm okay with
like
that.
Like face-to-face or online friends? Both?
Both. But there's a lot of people that like to talk online, but never to your face. And those are the kind of people that I just don't deal with. I don't have time to deal with them. I'd rather talk to somebody face to face. And if we disagree with somebody, let's talk it out. Let's
sure.
make it out.
Have some dialogue.
Right. And if they want to wear a mask, if they want to get a vaccine, fine, go do it. That's your choice. But do not force me to do something because you're scared. Because if your vaccine works and your mask works, then you're covered, and you shouldn't have to worry about us.
Right.
So that's how I always look at it. I say, let it be the choice of people, and just let people just choose for themselves what is right. Because what's right for you is not what's right for me.
Ankeny did choose. Ankeny, the last school board meeting, September 21st, we all gathered. Hundreds for the first time gathered. There was about 85% not wearing masks. Okay, so Ankeny decided we want a choice. We want to be able to decide what's good for us.
The city of Ankeny?
Yeah, the city of Ankeny. Yep. So now this really shows through the school board vote. One, it was record numbers. Record numbers, like almost 7 times what came out before in the last 2 years for voting. And they spoke and they said, no, we want parental choice. And that's what the platform that won these candidates, that's what won them their spots, was the platform of parental choice and freedom. So thankfully, Ankeny parents have woke up. I mean, the most of them, because now look what kind of school.
So you're saying 85%?
Well, in the
at this
school
particular,
meeting,
yeah.
They're unmasked. Yeah.
This was when?
September.
Emily, in September.
Right before they voted to put them back on, which they did. They voted to put them back on in September. And now recently, 2 days ago, once again, they're removed.
2 days ago.
3 new school board members to flip the scales of the school board. Tyranny versus freedom. And now we have 4 freedom candidates and they're not backing down.
So when you start, ladies, Mama Bears, when you started the movement, what was it, when did you start? April of 2020.
Yep.
So when you started your movement, 2020 of April, what would that number have been? What do you think? When you recollect, you look at the work that you've done over that year and a half, what would that number, you're saying it's 85% just a few days ago, what would that number originally have been? When you boldly stood up for your conviction, what would that number have been then?
I'd say conservatively 30-70. So 30% non-compliance like us,
Okay.
70% compliance.
70% compliant.
Yes. What do you think?
Absolutely. I would say that it's definitely that, because if not more, because honestly, everywhere I went, they were wearing masks everywhere. And any store we went into would say mask up. Yep, and mask up, mask up. And it's funny because I never really got mask harassed at any stores. Emily and I would always tease her, and I would always say, she's like, I always get stopped. I'm like, I never get stopped. And I'm like, it just must be the way I.
Were you
walked
two
in.
mama bears? Were you friends?
Yes.
You were friends.
before.
September of 2020. Yes, so God brought us together right at the right time. Honestly.
September of 2020.
Yeah.
So you became friends after the movement started?
Right before.
Right before.
So
September we became friends, and then we went down to Tulsa in April. So it was September, October, November,
20.
December, January,
Yeah, 'cause-
February, March, April. So it was 7 months into our friendship,
Yeah.
in which we began protesting before the
so
board.
it'd be 19.
The original
Because it was right before the
19.
pandemic.
Sorry.
The 19th, okay.
Yeah.
2019.
So you became friends in September, and then that following April, you started the Mama Bears. Okay, so you're saying conservatively, 70% of people would have been conforming, but now you're talking, and only 15%.
Yes. Because when we went to the board, when they wanted to mask our kids back up after the federal law came back and said, hey, we're putting a temporary hold, we came prepared.
federal law?
The federal law. So we
Was that the OSHA? Which law was that?
No, it was a federal judge appointed by Bill Clinton, Judge Robert Pratt. He stepped in and he put a temporary halt to the law. So he got
This is in the state of Iowa.
Yes, so we got the ACLU involved. He got the ARC of Iowa, which is a disabilities organization, and he recruited 11 families to put this lawsuit onto our governor and onto the Department of Education in Iowa.
That's fantastic.
And so when we went to the school board to vote whether or not we're going to put masks on
Yeah.
kids or not, we knew the school was going to do it because they didn't want to take it off to begin with, but because the law we passed in May forced them to take it off. But then when the judge said, hey, you can put them back on if you want, we knew they were going to do it. So we came prepared. We printed off religious exemptions and we handed them out to families, and we had 1,408 families turn in religious exemptions for their children in this Ankeny school district. So now,
It's about 12%.
yeah, about 10 to 12% of the Ankeny students were no longer wearing masks due to the religious exemptions.
You know what that means? They couldn't
Segregate.
segregate them.
Yes.
No more plexiglass like they did to poor Olivia and my
You're
daughter
kidding.
Evie.
Yeah.
And so we're like, we're ahead of you. You come with your evil, we're ahead of you.
So you got to be more proactive than reactive. So you always have to stay on top of it. So I encourage people to go to their school boards. Even if you don't have kids, you can still go. You are a taxpayer. You have every right to go. If you anything, be a listening ear and a watchful eye, because stuff like this is coming up all the time. We're just now battling pornographic books in our
I
kids'
hear this. I've heard this recently. They're in libraries.
Yes, they are. And I read from the book Gender Queer, and that has graphic pictures.
This is Common Core and Castle.
Yes.
To my understanding. There's a woman that recently joined my program out of Utah. Her name is Lisa Logan. And she revealed some of these programs. And she says they're coming out of the UN, the United Nations. That's where her research led them back to, is that they're coming to Castle, and the Common Core are coming from UNICEF. I'm pretty sure she said UNICEF and the United Nations.
Wow.
But she's saying this is the new movement now, is that these pornographic images and material are in elementary school
Yes.
libraries for
They are.
elementary school.
We know they're coming through SCL too. Okay, so
SCL?
Diversity of Equity and Inclusion, so the DEI program that all these schools are setting up, and the social emotional learning. So it's all under the umbrella of LGBTQ.
Okay.
Okay, so they're coming into the school. So our school is a $32,000 program based out of, it's called WinStar or something like that. So they have a whole program, $32,000 worth of this
WinStar.
SEL, social emotional learning, and it's under the LGBTQ umbrella. And then therefore they can put these books in there. It's normalizing and grooming children. They're normalizing the sexualization at a young age and grooming material for children.
So what are you using to combat that right now? What's been effective for you to combat
I
that?
honestly just took the pictures right out of the book that I was quoting.
You ripped
from.
them out.
Well, I blew them up because they were very pornographic. They were sexually exploding themselves, like pictures that a little kid can go and look at. And I blew them up and I put them on a picture, on a poster, and I said, "Is this what you want our kids in schools?"
Where did you put
looking
them?
at?" I put them on a poster board, and I took them to the school board, and I held up the sign that I made,
Sure.
and I read word for word exactly what it said. And they just kind of looked at us like, how did you get a hold of
Who's
these?
they?
The school board members. The old
Were they aware of this? Did they know this was in their
Oh
books?
yeah, they knew it was
They
there.
knew.
They knew, but they didn't know we knew. But we got a hold of a website that's on our website at iowamamabears.com.
And the other parents know.
So that any parent can look to see what books are in your school. So if you go to iowamamabears.com, under the column there's school board books, and you can go look in there and you can find what books are in your schools. And
In Iowa.
Yeah, in any state.
All
Any
across the country.
state, yes.
I think it's Follett. I think Follett is the search engine.
Follow it.
Yes. So like, and what I did was, like I said, I read from the book, and she read from the book. There's 2 other moms that read, and out of the 4 books that we read, only the one that I had up was removed. All the rest of them, they said that, this was more about, how do they word it?
Artistic and artistic value.
Yes.
They have
Artistic value?
Yes, artistic value.
To what purpose?
And it wasn't pornographic. And I'm like, what part of sexually trauma, like telling these kids how to pretty much do everything, is not pornographic?
And it's teens on young children. So the thing
Oh, you
over and
get
over
out of
these
here.
books are older teens on young children. So my thought is this.
This is happening?
Right now.
I'm appalled. I mean, I'm listening to you say this. I'm absolutely appalled. Continue.
They're children that are teens, okay? These parents that think this is normal. We have parents speaking up at these boards saying, you're censoring our artistic thought and our children's artistic thought, and you're anti-LGBTQ. It's like, what are you going to do when your teen lives out their fantasy from these books onto little children? What are you going to do then? Are you going to tell people, oh, they were just looking at the artistic value? No, you're influencing children's thoughts, and it's really promoting pedophilia.
It's grooming.
And child.
It's
sexual
flat out
abuse.
grooming.
It is.
I mean, as a sexual.
Kind of like this law that passed under Gavin Newsom in San Francisco. The San Francisco was a California senator, right? I don't recall the name, but he's basically legalized pedophilia for 18 to 14-year-olds.
I see, that's just wrong.
This is, I think, a couple years old now.
Yeah, and pedophilia is not a disorder. Not a disorder that we need to normalize. That is just wrong, sick. Because I'm a rape survivor, and as a young rape survivor, I was raped when I was 14 years old, and as a survivor, I know what grooming is. And these books are definitely grooming. And they might sit there and say it might feel good to these kids, and the kids are liking it, but there's a fine line between when it's wrong and what is right. And it should not be up to anybody but the kids' parents on what that line is, when that line is crossed. We should be able to tell our kids what sex is about when we want them to know. Our schools don't need to be telling them that stuff. I mean, I had to sign a waiver for my child to go to learn about their period. But I don't have to sign a waiver for my kid to check out a pornographic book in their school. And another thing that's sick is that they will not let a Bible into our school because they said that's religious. That falls under the religious.
They won't accept the Bible, but they'll accept the.
Yes, but they'll accept the porn books because it goes against their policy.
This is the school board.
Yes. Yeah.
But what you can do is you can get attention from your legislators and your senators. We are, and they're trying to pass a felony for the dissemination of this material with these school districts and hit their pocketbooks. So like sanctuary cities, they said if you don't do this, we're going to withhold money from you as a state. That's what these legislators are promoting come January. So we're all on board with that, and we're going to be right there next
Who are the name of some of these legislators?
Senator Jake Chapman is leading the way, and Eddie Andrews is supporting it, along with Sandy Salmon of Ohio.
Yeah. In U.S. Senate, Jim Carlin is also standing strong behind all this because they all think it's wrong, and we need to get it out of our books. We need to take out pornographic and the LGBTQ lingo and put back in Christ, because this is what's happening. They're taking Christ out, and if they never took the Bible out of school to begin with, we wouldn't be dealing with the pornographic stuff we are today. And so this is what I want to stand and make sure that, none of this ever happens to another child. What happened to me, I do not want to see happen to another child. And it's very simple grooming that they start at a young age. It's all the way in kinder care. We have done segments in kinder care where they are starting to groom children from 6 weeks old. And this is just wrong. This is how they normalize it. And like from a sexual survivor standpoint, if I was sexually harassed or abused,
Sexual abuse, yeah.
and I go to school, that's my safe spot. But now if schools are doing the same thing that my predators do, where is my protection? What am I going to do? How am I going to protect myself? This is why suicide rates are up. This is why depression is up. This is why kids are having issues with self-esteem. This is why kids are having problems going to school and being open about what's really happening, because they're being told that what we're doing is okay because it feels good. And you shouldn't tell because it feels good and you liked it. So then if you tell, then
That's what
somehow
they're
you're gonna be in
responding to.
trouble.
They're responding
Yes.
to that.
Yeah, so they're grooming these kids to make sure that they don't tell and they can get away with their pedophilia, and then they can prey on any child that they feel they want. And I just think that's wrong, and I'm going to fight it tooth and nail until God takes my last breath. I will be at every school board fighting this as much as I possibly can.
And these legislatures are behind you, and your movement is growing. How do you feel in general in Iowa? You're working hand in hand very closely with these legislators.
We become friends, honestly.
Yeah.
We're just more together now. Because when they stood by us with the mask and they listened and they responded and they
The same legislators did?
Same legislators. Same. I mean, some were instrumental with the pornographic material, but I really believe that we'll get those signatures on that bill from those same legislators. Absolutely. And more to come. I can't wait to see what
And your governor?
happens. And our governor's on board, absolutely. She
Yeah.
will sign it. Yep.
She signed it. Okay, so you've got Iowa that has, because the last time we spoke in Anaheim, Iowa was, I think it was the first state, one of the first states to outlaw mandates
Yes, it was.
for masks and also vaccines.
Yes.
Or is that in the works right now?
That's still in the works. I think she stopped it on Medicare.
Government part was.
Yeah, so the government, yes.
Yeah. However, the employees of healthcare workers,
Yeah.
and the employees of 100 and more,
Right.
that is what we're still fighting.
That's the federal
Yes. But I heard this
law.
week
Is
it
that an
just got-
executive order? That was an executive order, right, from Biden administration, which the executive orders are quasi-tyrannical anyway. Because everything should be going through Congress and not just a dictator saying, oh, this is the way it's going to be. Anyway, so that's that. But the vaccine mandates in Iowa are caught up right there on that issue from the Biden administration of 100 employees or more, right?
However, October 28th, we did get a big rally at the Capitol. Over 700 were in attendance, and there was a bill passed, and it did help in a way. So what it did is it said that someone can be their own arbitrator of their own medical exemption and religious, and it has to be accepted by the employer, okay? So if you think you're going to be harmed by the vaccine, you turn in your exemption, and that should be good enough. However, employers that don't accept it, if they don't, then they have to pay unemployment to that group of people. So let's say there's 30% unvaxxed who fill out these exemptions, well, they've got 30% unemployment. So I hit them in their pocketbook. It was something that was able to be accomplished on October 28th. 10 times. So little by little, we're going to chip away at this area.
So recently, I'm just going to throw this out there recently, and I don't know if there's any correlation or not, but mama bears is a really catchy phrase, and as you probably see the same thing happening as I travel across the country, it's really the women, especially the mothers, that have stood up and are standing up and are being the loudest voices. And that kind of affects the men, because the men are saying, oh, okay, I should stop watching this basketball game, maybe. Right? I mean, but it's the women, it's the mama bears from coast to coast that are making the voices loud enough. So what I was saying was Bianca Garza. So yesterday I get a message from a friend that says Bianca's on the War Room with Steve Bannon, and she's talking about the mama bears. I says, well, which Bianca? And she specifies what Bianca it is, and then, well, what mama bears? Because I know what group of mama bears. So I don't know if Bianca's just using the term now and applying it to what she's doing in
A
Texas.
lot of people are. And honestly, we want as many mama bears and papa bears as we can be out there. We don't care what they use them as. Go ahead. I mean, we're not trademarking the mama bears because you can't. Because we're all mama bears. And so we're all mama bears and papa bears out there. And we all are fighting the same fight. It's just like, you know what? It's one thing to come after us, but when you come after our kids, moms are coming out of the woodwork because you're done.
Now you're up for a fight.
Yeah. Like you can mess with daddy bears all you want, they'll fight you off as long as they can, but once they reach the dads and they get to our kids, moms come out and we put a stop to it because nobody's gonna mess with our kids. Because I know myself, I'll go to jail for my kids. I'll fight until the death for my kids. And I know any mom and dad out there will do the same. And it takes us fighting to win.
Yeah, you don't necessarily imply physical fighting, but making your
making our point. I mean, like if somebody was physically coming after my kids, you dang straight my claws will be out. Yes, I mean if they think they're gonna come, Biden knocking on my door, coming in with some jab, well, they better be able to just take us out because they're gonna either take us out on body bags or.
Well, do you practice the Second Amendment?
I learned how to shoot. I don't carry. If I should say,
Although-
I don't carry
You can
right
say whatever
now.
you want.
I don't
Free
carry
speech,
right? Now. But
Iowa's
I know how
a
to
free
shoot.
carry state.
Yeah.
So Iowa just passed a law in July that you no longer have to have a permit to carry. So you can go carry freely.
So that's like a constitutional carry, which is what Texas has, and Florida, and a number of other states.
Yep. And so,
you support that?
I sure do, absolutely. Because
what is that? What message, Kimberly? What message does that send to the government, in your view? If
my gun's
Mama
there,
bears.
my gun's there to protect you, just like your shot's there to protect me.
Whoa, that's really well said. That's really well said right there. That's a phrase that should be coined. So are you suggesting that
Everybody carry? Absolutely. I mean, if everybody has to get this shot to protect everybody else should have to carry a gun the same way.
And does that send a message to the government that, hey, we're going to keep you in check?
Yes. Because as soon as they take your guns away, that's your last self-defense that they have. What do you have to protect yourself? If they're coming to your house with guns pointed at you,
or injection needles,
or injections, yes. What do you have to protect yourself? Nothing. They can do whatever they want, and if you don't comply, you're dead.
It's like Australia. It's like in New Zealand. They gave up their guns.
Yeah.
Well, Emily,
They
talk
had
about
no
that.
defense left. Yeah, so we see people getting inoculated, being held down. These poor children. First, I saw children with disabilities in these homes, these group homes. They pulled the children out, they held them down, and they vaccinated them.
They held them down. By force, they injected them.
2,500 kids they pulled out.
This is New Zealand, you said?
No, Australia.
In Australia.
25,000, I think.
They force injected
I'm not
them.
sure how many it was, but
Yeah.
they did.
They took them out of their homes and took them and gave them the shot. Let me put it this way. If you were going to go into a place and you were going to kill people, would you go into a place that you knew that was a gun-free zone and shoot up everybody? Or would you go into a place that, oh, this place is gun-friendly? Well, I have one gun and I walk into a place that has many guns. How many more guns are going to be pointing back at me? Like, you're going to think twice if you think more people have guns in there than not. So if you go into a gun-free zone wanting to kill people, you're going to kill more people in that zone.
Look at Chicago. Look at New York.
Yes.
I mean, they're the strictest gun laws.
And they have the highest crime rates.
They have the highest rate of gun deaths.
That's right. But if everybody's carries, like I said, if you walk into a room like this and you're, hey, I'm going to shoot up, well, and everybody's here carrying, you're going to have hundreds of guns pointing back at you to your one. You're going to think twice about doing it. It's just, it's the same thing as vaccines. You know what I mean? How they always say, I got my shot to protect you. Well, I carry my gun to protect you.
So, Mama Bears, the work you're doing is incredible, and the momentum is growing. Where would you say you've had the most success outside of Iowa? What state has responded to you the most?
That's a great question.
Let me say that again.
That is a
a
great question.
I honestly don't
I think that it really goes by state as far as like at a local level. So there was a woman from Texas. She's Bianca's friend. You mentioned Bianca Garza, right? Her name's Laura. And Laura was able, through her efforts, to get 5 districts lifted for the mask mandate. So really, to me, it's at a local level. It's not necessarily by state right now, but it's pockets of parents rising up in their local area to make that national impact. Whether it's Indiana, whether it's Texas. Minnesota's been a great place for parents for overturning theirs. Owatonna overturned theirs. I mean, so
what was the last one?
Owatonna, Minnesota.
Owatonna, okay.
Yeah, they have a great group of mamas there.
Are they mama bears? Are you working with them?
I'd say they're mama bears.
They're mama bears. But you know about that because how? Have they reached out to you?
Yes. We were
They've
there
reached out to you. They've given you credit.
Yeah, we spoke about it. We spoke at their event.
I wouldn't say, don't give us credit. It's just people having the courage now to do what God's asked them to do at their arena of influence.
You're helping to strengthen them or support them or bring...
We're just showing them that 2 average people can do it.
Yeah.
And that's all we want to do. We want to encourage people to do what we've done. And we don't want to take the glory for any of it because, I mean, look at Biden. I mean, Biden's obviously scared that more parents are speaking up
no
to
doubt
the
about
board meetings because he's calling parents
Kimberly, no doubt about it.
Domestic terrorists. I'm like, no, Biden, we're not domestic terrorists. We're pissed off parents. That's what we are. And I'm like, he knows that we're a threat now because when you start at the local level, like our school boards, because you start locally, they can't indoctrinate our kids to grow up to be what they want them to be, to take over their spots. We stop it dead in their tracks at the local level. And that's what Flynn always says, local action has national impact, and it absolutely does. So start at your board meetings, start at your city council meetings, get involved as much as you can. And yes, schools make it very intimidating to go in there and talk. They do it on purpose. They make the room feel dark, they make it feel heavy because they want to deter families and parents from talking. But just be brave.
Silence them.
Yes, they do. And they try to make it intimidating when you walk
Zombify.
in. Almost.
I was in the last meeting pretty much by myself. So it was a large group of parents speaking out about the promotion of these books in the schools and how they should never be banned, the pornographic books, okay? So I walk in there all by myself, really, and I just felt like daggers. I mean, they were just searing at me because they know who we are, you know? And they know that my message is not going to be in support of these books because the previous one
But you're a threat.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it is intimidating, but you know what? When you're standing up and you're doing the right thing and you're standing against the world, God will be with you. He will give you strength. He will give you the words to say in that time. And He has throughout this whole experience just led one foot in front of the other, and He's directed our path. And He will direct yours too.
What I always think is funny is that these people never come out of the woodwork until they're called upon. And what I always say, a sheep never comes unless they're called upon. So when we went against the school board when they were fighting the mask mandates to begin with, when they wanted to put them back on, there was about 80 of us parents there that were against putting masks on. There's about 20, maybe 30 at most, that were for masks. And they only came because they were summoned to come, because they didn't even go to the meeting. They stood outside in their little clan and they protested silently with their mask on, and as soon as they got done doing their little protest for 5 minutes, they all went home.
For a media op.
Yeah, so they did it for a media op, but I ruined that media op. They were all standing in line, had their mask on, and I was going to hold the door open for them and let them come in and say, hey, welcome to the meeting, thinking they're going to come to the meeting and we're going to kind of battle it out like no mask, you know? Nope. I think there were maybe 15 of them that actually came into the meeting, but the rest of them were all standing outside in a line, and they were all standing there. So the news media, they called all the major news source outlets that were in the Ankeny area. They were all there taking pictures, doing their thing. So they basically did it for a photo op. They were all putting it away, and so like I said, I was holding the door, and I'm like, where's all the people in the mask? Like, I was wanting to hold the door open. And they're like, oh, they're standing down there by the thing. And I'm like, what? So I walked down there and they were standing there. Well, they took our advice and said, we told them to dress alike when you go to the school board meeting so they know we're unified. So I got wind that they were wearing white. So we now have white Freedom Over Fear shirts. So they're all standing there. So I went and I saw them standing there, and I had my phone and I handed it to some lady who was in the corner praying. I'm like, can you record this for me? She's like, yeah. So I walked right in front of all these people standing in line, protesting to take masks off. They were doing a silent stance, and I stood in front of them. I just went and stood in front of them. All the media outlets.
Without a mask.
Without a mask, yep. All the media outlet guys were standing there, and they were pulling their stuff out as quick as they could because they wanted the picture. And instead of them making the front line picture like they wanted to, saying, we need masks back on kids, it was me standing in front of all the masked people, unmasked, saying...
That's what got the front page.
That's what made the front line page of Des Moines Register. Absolutely. I ruined their photo op because you know what? Evil does not win. We win when we are united. Even if you have to stand alone, like I did in front of all them, it has a huge impact. And the very next day, we got so much hate because they're like, how dare they portray Ankeny this way? We are not this way. We want to be portrayed as a united community. And this is not it. And I'm like, just because we don't agree doesn't mean we can't be united. You can wear your mask if that's what makes you feel good, and I cannot wear my mask, and we can still agree that we want a healthy, happy community. But they didn't see it that way, so I was just like, that's okay.
So let me ask you this question here. I'm going to ask you two questions, and we'll wind down. And I appreciate your time. And Olivia, you've been very patient.
It's getting tired.
Thank you very much. So, in part of this question, it's somewhat twofold. Since you began your movement, and you've obviously made some great impacts, do you see the nation as a whole? Certainly Iowa, as it sounds like, and you've got this legislation coming up that it sounds like it's going to get signed off on. Do you see the nation making progress?
Yes. God's moving. I see God moving everywhere. I mean, even in the darkness. And I see him bringing people unto himself. And just ordinary people. Look at the Bible. He didn't use great, extraordinary men. He used ordinary men, fishermen, tax collectors. You know what I mean? So he's raising up the remnant. Yeah, I see it all over. We have hundreds of moms and dads contacting us and giving us their celebrations in their cities. They're asking for help and saying, I'm ready to stand up. I'm ready to do something. So yes, God is moving and it is going across this nation. Whoever would have ears to hear and eyes to see, he's working.
And he's waking people up every day. And that's why we have dedicated our podcast that we have started to families and friends that have had stories similar to ours that have been silenced, that have been censored. You know, we've been silenced and censored for so long that everybody's starting to think it's the norm. It's not the norm. And they think that we're the minority, but our priority, but we're not. Like, we are the majority. We are the majority. And they have silenced us, but we're giving them a platform that they can come on to iwillmamabears.com and they can talk about whatever topic they want, uncensored, whether it's for or against masks. We don't care. You know, we want to give you a voice. I mean, we are not against people who want to wear them. We're just against the mandates that people are forcing on people.
I am in a way because of the harm it's causing. Like, I just want to share the truth. And the truth, according to these doctors here that are willing to sacrifice everything.
The lack of oxygen you
The
take
lack of oxygen, the bacteria,
hampers the immune system.
pathogens that are being spread onto these children. So, in a sense, I mean, I will still love that person, but I'm for speaking the truth in love. And the truth is these masks forced on children are child abuse, and they're harming them. So, if a parent wants to do that, I will still love you. I mean, hate the sin, love the sinner. But it is a sin to harm children. So I'm not going to sit back and say nothing. I will tell you the truth in love, but I will speak the truth always.
You gave Olivia permission to go get water?
No, she went to go see her dad.
Okay, so here's the, and I'm just going to ask you this. If you had a chance, and you have a chance, to tell Joe Biden something, what would you tell Joe Biden? Kimberly.
I was going to say, are you going to
Keep it clean, keep it clean.
Yeah, let's go Brandon.
I would say you are not the legitimate president. And I would say those of us who see, we will continue to fight for election integrity. And we're banding together. and we're not going to let 2020 go. I mean, God is in control ultimately, but you're not the legitimate president. And I only bow to God, and I'll never bow to your government. That's what I told you, right?
Okay, so let's take that one step further, and we'll wrap it up. Who's the they? Who's the? What I mean by that is, you get Donald Trump in office, whether you like him or not. I don't know if you like him or not, but he starts bringing two phrases to mainstream America, and that is deep state and fake news. And so now, because of his presidency, people like you and me and whatever, they're like, oh wait, I'm going to listen to the person in the non-mainstream, if you will. I'm going to listen to the mothers that are crying out and saying, wait, so this isn't healthy for my children, and you're going to have to go through me. Kind of like Ron DeSantis, right? You want my state, you're going to have to go through me.
Right.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah. Right. So, but if you look at fake news, and we see that the news is certainly tainted, and it almost divides the country
One-sided,
politically.
that's for sure.
It's like, you go over there to the left and you go over there to the right, which is not productive at all,
Right.
but it is what we have. But let's go to the they, and we say, what is the deep state? And if there's a rigged election, who's rigged it? Wait, is the deep state Joe Biden and what is it? Is it him and Pelosi, or is there something else? Is there something else? There's something else.
We know other countries are involved.
And let me thread this in. I'll just thread this in. Because I'll ask people, I'll say, hey, is it a communist revolution? Is it a communist invasion? Is there a string here that's connected to this deep state that is blatantly inserting communist policies into America to try to destroy it? And I had a guy from the University of Havana in Cuba. His name is Servando Gonzalez. And he said, Ian, there's no doubt. He says, from my research, the CIA controlled the Fidel Castro takeover of Cuba. The CIA. And he says, that's exactly what is planned to happen in the United States. Servando Gonzalez, he's a Cuban educated,
If they can
Cuban
take over
born.
the United States, they can take over the world. We're the
Who's
last.
the they? Kimberly, so talk about that.
Honestly, I just think they is the deep state, like China infiltrated.
Okay.
Like, I'm not a very political person, so I can't really go into that stuff. I'm more of the vaccine side
But
of things.
America's the last
Yes, but I believe
obstacle in
that
their way.
America is the last obstacle. Yes, because America was based on home of the brave, land of the free. If they
Protestants, right? Protestants?
Yes, if they can
Mayflower?
overcome us, they can control everything. And that's the way I personally feel. And I think China's waiting on the borders just for the go-ahead, the green light, because Biden pulled us out of Afghanistan. That was the biggest mistake ever. He should have just pulled slowly. But Afghanistan was our direct line to China. Now we don't have that. Oh yeah, and then he's putting the military with all the vaccines. So my stance is, they pulled us out of Afghanistan so we're not easily accessible to China. Now they're doing the vaccines so that way when the vaccines start doing what they're supposed to do and knocking off all these people, our military is going to be dwindled down to almost nothing. What defense do we have left if we don't start standing up as people, we the people, to overcome this? What do we have left to save our country? It's moms, dads, grandma, and grandpas who are going to be stepping up to that plate, that are going to be forced to save this world, because if we don't, they're going to take over, and then we're all going to be under the thumb of China and whoever else wants to make it.
The UN.
The UN, yeah.
The UN. I think the UN.
You think the UN's behind?
World Economic Forum? Yeah. This was all planned from the beginning, a decade ago.
Event 201.
Event 201. I watched that, Fauci and Gates, and it's all been planned. It's all about destroying the United States.
My question is, why are we listening to Fauci, who hasn't seen a patient in the last 40 years? And why are we listening to Bill Gates, who doesn't even have a medical background?
Right.
He dropped out of school for all of it. When people ask me, where's my medical background? When they like, hey, where's your medical background? How do you know all this? I'm like, I got the same place Fauci did. Google.
Artificial intelligence.
Right? But it's common sense, people. Like, honestly, if you just look at stuff like this, common sense will tell you something's off. And I believe a lot of the common sense in people has gone, unfortunately. And so we're just kind of trying to bring it back, like, think about this or think about that. I'm not trying to push my ideas on people. I'm just trying to
Right.
get them to question things like I have. Like, why do we vaccinate from birth until whatever? What's the point? Like, we give our babies hepatitis B shots right within 24 hours.
Right.
Do you know what the hepatitis B shot
That's a
is
sexually
for?
transmitted disease.
It sure is. So unless the mother is positive, why does a baby need it? And that shot wears off in 10 to 15 years. So when the kid becomes sexually active, it's no longer effective anyway. So what's the point of doing it? So that's kind of how I started getting into this, because I have vaccine-injured kids.
Oh.
And so
Autism? You do too?
I don't have any that are on the autism spectrum, but I did have some of my children code. My son got mumps, and so it never really correlated any of that until I started looking into the vaccines. And so when I started looking and digging, that's when I was like, holy cow, why would we give our kids some of these vaccines, like the hepatitis B shot, like the vitamin K shot, which is not a vitamin shot at all. But if you look, vitamin K shot is the only shot that has a black box warning. And the black box warning means death. Why would we be giving that to our newborn children right off the bat? That's what made me start questioning, and that's what I want people to ask themselves. Ask their doctors, what's in the vaccines? Why do we need these? What are you going to do if something happens to my child because you just harmed my child through the vaccines? Because the vaccine manufacturers, thanks to the 1986 Act, is no longer...
Reagan?
Yes, due to Reagan, are no longer liable for anything that they've done. So if a vaccine manufacturer is not liable for any harm that they cause, what would make them make it better? What would make them say, oh, maybe we should stop this vaccine because it's now killing more people than it's saving? What's stopping them from doing more harm than good because they don't have liability? They just wash their hands, say,
Yeah, profit.
oh. And that's exactly what they're doing to the COVID vaccine. Honestly, I think the COVID vaccine in adults is a blessing in disguise, because babies from 6 months or 2 months old all the way to 2 years old is when they get the most vaccines. Do you know that babies start talking at the age of 2? And so from 2 months old to 2 years old, if your baby cries a lot after the vaccines, the doctor will sit there and say your baby's colic. And you're not going to think twice about it because, oh, maybe that's what it is. Babies don't normally cry that much. Babies are typically happy. They cry when they need something. And I found this out firsthand.
Hungry.
Yep. And so I found this out firsthand because my 5 older children cry a lot. And I pulled all their medical records. And all my kids had ended up in the hospital within like a 2-week time frame. With
Being vaccinated.
After vaccinations. RSV, croup, whooping cough. My son had mumps. And it's just like, what in the world? And I never correlated the two until I started digging. Ear infections and sore throat are the #1 causes of all side effects of vaccines. You know the #1 surgery in kids ages 6 months to 2 years? Tubes put in their ears and adenoids and tonsils taken out. #1 surgery that is done in all
Tonsils?
children. Yes. Adenoids and tonsils, because you'll get strep throat all the time. Kids will start getting strep throat, or they'll have sleep apnea. And it's because of these, it's caused by these vaccines. And so that's why I say just look into them, question them.
Sounds like they're weakening the immune system.
Absolutely. Because the way
It's
I
like
look at
it's
it,
an overload.
yeah, and the way I look at it is vaccines are the gateway drug to be pharmaceutical dependent for the rest of your life.
You've got some great saying. You've got some great phrases here.
When I was growing up, we had 17 vaccines. Then Reagan comes forward with that 1986 Act, making them not liable, the pharmaceutical companies not liable for harm or death to children. Right? Well, now they've increased it to 72
Doses.
72 doses, okay? In exchange for the fact that they were going to test every new vaccine.
Every 2 years they were supposed to test. Every 2 years for safety and effectiveness. In the last 32 years, not one of those studies has been done. And if you you go to thehighwire.com, it's all on there. Del Bigtree talks about it all the time. And that's just, Del Bigtree and Robert Kennedy Jr. has actually sued and won the lawsuit on those because they have not done the safety studies that they were supposed to do under that law. So we need to repeal the 1986 Act.
Emily?
I mean, I would agree with that. My son's dad seemed injured. I trusted my doctor 17 years ago. Gave him his normal MMR shot. He stopped bleeding. I thought, something's wrong here. You just know as a mother that you have that instinct. So I began to research. The Marisol is in it. You get, aluminum, a form of aluminum. Formaldehyde is in there. Aborted fetal tissue is in there. Why would we need aborted fetal tissue in these vaccines, right? And I thought, and also...
You have this listed on your website, so listeners can go to your website and see this, or they go to the Highwire?
They can go to either one. So the Highwire will be more in depth about this stuff. On our website, I don't know if there's anything on there yet, but we can definitely put the ingredients of vaccines up on there because I have a link to it that was from the CDC. One of the things that you guys can look up is WI38 and MRC5. Those are the two main human cells that they use in vaccines to make, and it took 72 aborted fetus cells to make one kind of vaccine.
You mean aborted fetuses?
Yes, aborted fetuses. Yes, to make the cells that they needed. And they took the tongues from these babies, they took eyes from these babies, they took the fingerprints, they took livers. I mean, this is why they want abortion legal, because they can keep doing what they're doing. It's just sick.
What is it that they're doing? Making people pharmaceutical dependent?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because a healthy person is a lost profit.
That's another great phrase. Another great phrase.
But if you think about it, you go to the doctor when you're sick. You really think that your doctor is going to want you healthy? No, they're going to treat the symptoms so you can get by.
Dr. Janice Schmidt might want you healthy.
Yes. There is some
naturally healthy.
Dr. Artis is a good one. He wants you healthy, but most of them do not. They profit on you coming back. And by giving kids vaccines, you're a guaranteed profit because you're going to have that side effects. My kids went back several times because their ear infection. They went back several times because they had whooping cough, they had croup. It's a never-ending cycle. And so I always tell the doctor when she's like, "Oh, I'm here to help you." I'm like, "Are you here to help me, or are you here to make a profit? Because if you're here to help me, give me something that will cure my child and not just put a Band-Aid over those symptoms."
And you say this.
I say this. So you date straight, I say this. And my doctor said that, if you don't want to vaccinate, then I can't have you in my office. I'm like, that's fine. I'll go. And I've been kicked out of 2. I sure am. I'm like, give me my paperwork now. I'm gone. Because no doctor that is going to make me do something against my will or will not sit there and explain things to me, I don't need them in my kid's life. These well checks are nothing but to get your vaccines. And those vaccines is to make sure you're a reoccurring employee, basically. So, customer.
Did you find any link? I'm just going to ask you, Mama Bears. Did you find any link to Fauci's involvement in the AIDS epidemic? Now, what I want to start talking about is Dallas is an important place, right? Because this is where we lost one of our beloved presidents. I thought JFK was beloved. Or we're not technically in Dallas. We're in Frisco. But the other thing that's interesting is the Dallas Buyers Club. You familiar with that movie with Robert McConaughey? No, it's not Robert. It's Matthew. Yeah, Matthew. Yeah, Emily. Yeah. Matthew McConaughey. Dallas. Are you familiar with that movie, Emily?
It's called the Buyers Club?
The Dallas Buyers Club.
That's the one who lost a bunch of weight. It's about drugs, wasn't it?
Yes, it's about a man that is a homosexual that has, I believe he has contracted the AIDS virus. Yet he had found medication. This is my understanding of the movie. It may be incorrect, but he had found medication that was non-mainstream, that was working, and then he became a target. I think something like that was the crux of the movie. But I just want to ask you, because you've done a lot of research on vaccines. So we've gone from mandates, which you're doing great work on, and now tackling pornographic material in elementary schools. I mean, this is just, I don't even want to repeat it. So now, I mean, you're kind of like a power couple, right? You're doing really great work. So now you're talking about the vaccines. So have you found any research correlating the work? And I know Judy Mikovits has, and some other doctors, Peter
Yeah,
Paula
she's
has,
amazing.
correlating Fauci's involvement with the AIDS epidemic to this present kind of forced vaccination, tyrannic movement that you've even threaded the World Economic Forum into being involved in, which people should certainly give wind to and listen to, give weight to, or whatever the phrase is. So have you found any of that correlation there? There's a great book called AIDS Incorporated by John Rappaport, and it was written in like 1989.
Wow.
Yeah, happy to send you the PDF. Written in like 1989, where he says it was just a profit-mongering movement, and that the homosexual community was simply a target, and not necessarily AIDS wasn't a product of that community. They were just a target of it. But AIDS Incorporated. So Fauci is involved in that research in the 80s.
AIDS were only found in monkeys until they
Supposedly, yeah.
Yes.
Just like the Zika virus. Now the Zika virus, where I started in Miami, was because of the Zika virus. And the Zika virus is a benign virus discovered from a monkey in the Uganda forest in Africa. And the Rockefellers own a patent on the extraction process. The Rockefeller Foundation, not the Rockefellers, but the Rockefeller Foundation. Sorry, Rockefellers. And I do hope they are listening, because we're coming after you. Actually, we're coming after the bank that controls them, right? But then they also controlled the Chevron Chemical Corporation that developed the pesticide. And the pesticide was banned in Europe because it had no neurotoxin. It caused microcephaly. Yet the CDC in 2016 saying that the Zika virus caused microcephaly. There's no.
Same with polio and DDT.
Oh, see, I didn't know. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, polio was because of DDT when they were spraying it with mosquitoes back in the 60s.
DDT.
Yes, and so when they stopped spraying people with DDT, polio stopped because polio was a seasonal.
But didn't FDR have polio?
Yeah.
He got it from a mosquito.
So mosquito, now that they have eradicated polio, any polio that has been found now is all vaccine strains. So Judy Mikovits talks about this, the polio being in with the DDT and everything else. And so she said that's because they realized that, yes, mosquitoes did carry polio, the natural virus, but then people were starting to get sick of polio-like things. Like the Guillain-Barré, it's polio just renamed. If you think about Guillain-Barré syndrome and polio, look up the two and see the symptoms. They're identical. So polio never really went away because of the vaccines. They just renamed things. And so they renamed it so that way it looks like the vaccines are working. But people, when you start doing more sanitary, you start using, you stopped using DDT, the polio went away. And so it was on the decline. Same with measles, same with now the chickenpox are sitting there saying, oh, we eradicated chickenpox. No, now you gave kids shingles because you can get shingles from the chickenpox vaccine. Now the kids aren't getting chickenpox, but kids are getting shingles because of the chickenpox vaccine. And so that's what I say. Just
And the Spanish flu originating on an American military base.
Yes. All man-made.
If they can create the crisis, then they can monopolize the cure.
Who's they? Emily, who's they? The UN? You're saying?
Deep state.
Is that the UN?
They've infiltrated underneath it all. I mean, the UN is one of
The government.
And you've got China, and you've got all the other countries that are like us. But they've also sent them out into America. So there's like 300,000 international students that are connected to the CCP. So that's just with China. And they've infiltrated.
That would make great spies.
Yeah, they probably are great spies. Okay? Honestly. And they've infiltrated every area. The field of education, field of influence, field of business that we could possibly imagine.
Yes, my friend.
This event could take place. The Great Reset. That's going to
this is now. Wait, hold on.
This is
Olivia,
my
what have you brought here?
This is Savannah.
Oh, you brought your sister, Olivia. Savannah.
This is Savannah.
Savannah. Hi.
Say hi to me.
How are you? All right.
This is
Okay.
my husband and my youngest. So we got the whole family, well, almost the whole family. We got 3 of the 7 kids here.
3 of this.
3 of the 7. This
Well,
is why we're fighting. It's because of our
That's
kids.
right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, if we don't step up and do something, what kind of world are we going to leave for them? I don't want them waking up every day being told where they can and can't go, who they can and can't see. I don't want my kids.
Look them in the eye and say, I never fought for you. Look them in the eye and say, why didn't you fight for me? There's no way. I can face the Lord on Judgment Day, and I want him to say, well done, good and faithful servant. Say, look, I showed you this evil. I gave you my spirit. I gave you the courage. What did you do with the talents I gave you? Did you hide and bury them in the ground, or did you stand up and do the right thing? Stand up for these children.
So let me. I want to give both of you a chance to kind of wind down and give your own closing comments for listeners. But I want to inject something here. It's an interesting perspective. An interesting perspective that I recently came across, and it kind of correlates to the Mayflower, right? So I talked about Protestantism, right? And what's interesting is that in 2016, when I started the show, I was told by a former JAG lawyer that I'd be charged as a terrorist if I'd gone to the airport to protest and hold up signs about the pesticide being a neurotoxin. Okay, so I mean, not that I'd literally be charged as a terrorist, but that if there was media there, I'd be the cameras would be turned off. I'd be thrown on. I mean, I have this in the text message. I'd be thrown onto private land, charged with trespassing, and likely a charge of terrorism. That was the exact text message sent to me. And that coming from somebody at Tallahassee, whoever that person was talking to. Somebody charged as a terrorist to protest. So using that.
So they're trying to intimidate you.
Using that term, protest, Protestant. So the Mayflower were Protestants, right? And so their whole release was from a system of governance, which was conform or get out of here, right? And that's what King Henry VIII, right, fought against, was this kind of Roman control. So here's just an interesting perspective here. How do we tie that? And I've tied it, but how do we tie that to what's happening today in the United States? Because the country's based off of that Mayflower voyage, right? I mean, whether it's still there today, we don't know, but we do have a constitution that gives us those freedoms, right? Okay, so if we take that, then we take the communist invasion from maybe China or somewhere else. Karl Marx had been kicked out of Germany by Bismarck. He'd been kicked out of Germany by Bismarck, and he was at the British Museum in London when he was writing Das Kapital. Who was his tutor? So who was his mentor? So what? Yeah, no, I don't know anybody who knows this. I mean, it's just that so his mentor. This is where things kind of get anti-constitutional, because then you're kind of mandating and you're looking at a form of power and how that power obtained their power, right? So it's important. How did that power obtain their power? They certainly lost large portions of it, but do they still retain parts of it? That's kind of a question. So at the British Museum, he's mentored by a guy named Peter Beckx, B-E-C-K-X, just like Marx, M-A-R-X. So who was Peter Beckx? Do you have any idea who that was?
I've never heard of him.
So this guy Peter Beckx was what's called a superior general for the Society of Jesus out of the Vatican. And this is a military order. Military invasion. Think invasion of a government. Invade a government. And how would you do that? So a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I had on a brigadier general, retired. His name is Robert Spalding, and he's written a book. He's called the Stealth Enemy, American Stealth Enemy. And that enemy, he says, is China. Just like you're saying, Emily. He says it's China.
So China is tied to the Vatican.
How, Emily? How?
Well, they made it.
Are you suggesting that, or are you stating that?
Well, I know they made an agreement
You know
of
this.
some kind. Yeah. But I'm not going to talk about the details right now because I would have to have the research in front of me. I don't like to make statements unless I know the information.
But if a listener went to Mama Bears, is it mamabears.com?
Yeah, Iowa Mama Bears.
I
iowamamabears.com.
can do the research once again, bring back up the information that I know, but I don't want to say something off.
So
the top of
Emily,
my
no,
head.
this correlates with my research as well, because in 1945, World War II, post-World War II, two things started that year. The United Nations was started, and also the Central Bank of China was started that year. Central banks are all fed out of the Bank of International Settlements, Basel, Switzerland. Anyway, so that's who this fellow Peter Bex was. And he's literally a general of an army. That's what they are. They're an army. So they're trained to theologically, not theoretically, theologically. They're trained to invade and conquer countries. Theologically.
Is he trained through the Vatican as well? Do you believe he has ties directly to the Vatican?
Absolutely. Today, Emily. Today, the head of that army, if you will, the Superior General of the Society of Jesus, is a fellow out of Venezuela.
See where they use Jesus' name like that too.
Is a fellow out of Venezuela named Sosa. He's considered a black pope. So there are three popes. The Pope Francis is not Franciscan; he's a Jesuit. And you're nodding your head. You understand what I'm saying. Then you have Sosa. I'm not sure what his first name is. He's considered the black pope. And then there's something called the gray pope, which is supposedly the head of the finances. That's a fellow named Pepe Orsini. Now the House of Orsini, the Orsini family, has produced something like at least seven popes in its history. I mean, this is a family with yeah, it's a bloodline. They've been around for centuries, and they've had this power and control for centuries. So we're leaving it at that. We kind of wrap things back around with, hey, so where I leave listeners with is I've simply done the research, right? It's like the two of you certainly done the research, and I present it for listeners to do their own research and dot the I's, across the T's. So that's up to listeners to do that. But that's what I have done, and I wrote an article after the San Antonio event. I wrote an article that said remember the Alamo, remember the Alamo.
That's right.
And what I do in that article is I link the same enemy that the Texans were running from the Mexicans, which would be the Spanish. Okay, the Spanish queen, the monarchy, because we don't have a monarchy in the United States. So they basically, in a roundabout way, over the centuries of what was New Spain became Mexico, and it became these separate states in the north, Texas, California. They left that union for corruption. What I argue in that article is, are we facing the same enemy today? And my argument is yes, we are. Or my response is yes, we are. And so that's where I lined it up through the City of London and the Rothschild, because I had a guest on my show that wrote a book. He teaches economics in London, and he co-wrote a book called Sabotage with a Russian woman named Anastasia Nestotilova. Look, the book was about economics. They teach economics. But I asked Ronan Palin. I says Ronan, in 1066, William the Conqueror was unable to conquer the city of London. And he says yes. I says, well then who can? And that still remains today. It's its own corporation. It's its own sovereign nation. Do you realize that? Do you know that?
Not London, I did not
Yes.
know that. But I know the Vatican, they have their own laws.
Same structure.
The Holy See, yeah, they have their
Emily,
own
it's the
structure,
same.
their own laws.
It's the same structure as the city of
London
London.
is?
The same
Really?
structure. The same structure. Emily, it's the same structure. The City of London controls the monarchy. Period. The monarchy must ask for permission to enter the City of London. So the Queen today, she reports to her bankers. That's a fact. That is a fact. Emily, it's a fact. It's a fact. So then my question to him, and this has stood since 1066, right? So So, but the English people love their queen, they love their kings. Right? Well, we don't like monarchies in America, right? That makes us different. We don't have monarchies. We are the monarchy. So then my question to this professor of economics, which caught Anastasia totally off guard. Like she avoided it. She didn't want to. But he answered it. And I says, if England does not control the city of London, then who controls it? And his response to me was, it's an ancient medieval banking mechanism. Well, we know before Constantine the Great who was in the British Isles. It was the Romans. So that's how I link back to the Alamo.
Now we're getting into biblical stuff. Now we're getting into biblical stuff, which I would love to have a conversation about another time. I seriously would, because Rome is very intricately woven into the end times and into.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Absolutely, they are. We can go through the book of Daniel together.
Well, you can teach me, because I
love that.
I don't know.
She does the whole biblical side of things, and she's the political side, where I'm the vaccine side.
Okay.
Like a good team.
So anything political, I'm like, Emily, what does this mean? What is this doing? And she's like, anything vaccine, she's asking me. So that's how we balance each other out. It's like when it comes to political stuff, I try to stay out.
Yeah, you said that earlier. You did say that, but you have great catchphrases. You need to coin some of these phrases. Olivia.
I just call it like it is. Right.
Such a sweetheart. Okay, so let's wind down here. We've done quite an episode.
Like, I was fun sitting here. I love this dialogue, and I'm picking up on so much of what you're saying. I had some pieces of what you were saying, and now it's all just connecting. I think.
I'm going to send you a link to the article that I wrote, and you can go through that, because that probably. But this is, it kind of makes sense, right? It kind of wraps things around. So like the Spanish flu, and then it started on military base. And I had an African guy, a Yale graduate, on my show, been 2 weeks ago. And he started an organization called the Balanta Society. He's living in Guinea, I think it is. In,
Papua New Guinea?
Yeah.
What?
Papua New Guinea?
Yeah.
Perhaps. I can't remember exactly where he's living, but I think it's on the west coast of Africa. I think it is. Sipawi is his name. Sipawi, happy to make the introduction. He's a great guy, born in America, African American, outstanding swimmer, great athletic abilities, but completely and totally against this colonial machine, right? Because that's kind of what we're talking about. It's a colonial empire. It's kind of what we're talking about here, right? So what he's done is he's created a chronology. He's created a chronology of 100 years that shows exactly what things that you're talking about, where this kind of hidden colonial empire has literally used masses of people as guinea pigs to achieve their continued rule. Anyway, so the Balanta Society, but anybody that listens to my work is familiar with that. So let's take a few moments, and we'll wind down with some closing comments and closing thoughts. Olivia. You haven't spoken yet. What are some You're like, what?
What do you want to talk about?
What do you want listeners to walk away with? As a 7-year-old freedom fighter, non-mask wearer.
What do you want to tell everybody to do?
Proud student. Proud daughter.
Everybody, take off your mask.
Good job, baby. Good job.
Boom.
And what else should we do?
Fight like a Flynn.
Fight like a Flynn. Yes, that's right. Fight
Boom.
like a Flynn. That's right.
Olivia, thank you. Emily, some final comments, please.
I just thank you for this time, and I hope and pray that those who are listening would understand too that we're fighting against evil. So yes, these systems are systems and they're operating under people, but really the puppet master, to me, is the enemy of our souls himself. So we need to get a bigger picture that we're in a battle of good versus evil. And so as we become informed, we also need to become informed in the Lord too, because he spoke to us through his word that this was coming, that this day was coming. So I would encourage them to, one, come to one of these events. It's life-changing.
What's the event?
The event is Reawaken America Tour. Right now we are in Dallas, Texas, and next we will be in Phoenix, Arizona with the great Clay Clark and General Flynn.
And if you use the beer, the code Mama Bears, you get 10% off your tickets.
Yes, and we'd love to meet you. So my thoughts are, please understand that this is biblical. What's going on is biblical, and we all need to get right with the Lord and have a relationship with Christ because He is returning. So whether He's returning before we restore this country, whether we get this country restored, our hearts need to be restored too. Our hearts need to be right, and we cannot overcome evil with evil. We have to overcome evil with good. So as I stand to speak the truth in love. I don't come against people in any ill will against anyone in this. I just want to encourage everyone to be on the right side with God.
Kimberly, some final words.
I guess I've always said that if you let the government break the law because of an emergency, the government's always going to create an emergency so they can keep breaking the law. We have to stop that. We have to stop relying on the government to protect us because they're not there to protect us. We have to protect ourselves and we have to unite with one another to overcome the tyrannical that's going on by the government. And if we don't, we're going to lose everything. So my closing thoughts is unite, stop being afraid, and let's get up and get out and get loud.
Wow. Mama Bears and Olivia, thank you, ladies. Thank you very much.